Hello viewers, I'm SB, and this is just a little channel update. You know, it's been a long time since I did one of these. I just have a couple small things that I want to talk about today. The first of which is this lovely new friend. Meet Aghast, everybody. I figured it was time I finally get an assistant around here, and her resume says... Well, actually, this just says the words magic and skeleton on it, which I guess is fair enough. That is all that I put in the ad. I've wanted to have a mascot character for the channel for years, since the very, very beginning. I've tried sketching something up a couple of times myself, but of course I ran into two big problems with that. First of all, I could never really nail down exactly what I wanted it to be. And secondly, oh yeah, it turns out I cannot draw at all, like not even a little bit. There's a reason that like all of the channel art through the years has always been screenshots or like lightly edited public domain images. And so that's as far as that went for a long time. Like I would occasionally try to draw a cool mascot, and then I would get really frustrated with how bad I am at it, and then I would put it away and not think about it again for a while. But slowly, something else started creeping up inside me, and this is a complicated story, because it's tied up in a lot more than just a cartoon character. You're just gonna have to stay with me a little bit here. For reasons that will be clear by the end of this video, it started to become more important to me to work this out. The need to sort of change the way I present myself everywhere, but you know, also online, was becoming bigger and more urgent. So I decided to search for an artist who could maybe help me with this. I have written and rewritten this part so many times because I am desperately trying to avoid using the word rebrand, because it feels gross, I think, to talk about my own identity in that way. And if you've heard me talk about identity in online spaces before, you know I have a lot of complicated thoughts and feelings about online presence and the projection of identity, and how much people, especially people in this line of work, use that to sort of take advantage of other people online, and how much I do not want to do that. And, you know, there's a huge and complicated series of social mechanisms that we are always engaging with when we present ourselves as anyone or anything. And mostly we do that without consciously thinking about them. I have been consciously thinking about them a lot as I try to navigate this, which you can probably tell, as I sort of try to figure out how to represent myself. Look, the place I'm going with this is that I'm trans, and I'm pretty nervous about that, and I'm telling you this story about a cartoon skeleton to try to help me get up the courage to tell you that I'm trans. And at this point in the story, you don't know it yet, see, but later I'm gonna say it, and everybody's gonna be like, oh, that's what the presentation bit was about. It seemed like it was the one thing, but actually it was two things. I get foreshadowing. And it'll all make sense then. I'm getting distracted. The point is, clearly I needed some help. So, for that, I owe many, many, many thanks to the very excellent Marie Enger, who worked with me to hammer a lot of hemming and hawing and, gee, I don't know, maybe there should be a robe type stuff into like an actual character design, and who then crammed an absolutely heroic amount of detail into this layer image. I first encountered Marie's work in a book called Dagger Dagger, which I kickstarted because the Kickstarter page said it's a blood-fi comic book anthology of magic and science, and that's like a description that was grown in a lab specifically to appeal to me. Marie's story in the book is called Death to the Wizard Kings, and as soon as I read it, I knew they were the only artist that I wanted to help me bring my weird skeleton dreams to life. Death to the Wizard Kings is awesome. It's one of my favorite comic stories ever. Not just because of the art, although the art is amazing. And honestly, like Dagger Dagger as a whole is a really spectacular collection. If you're into indie comics or just things that are really good, you can pick up a digital or physical copy of Dagger Dagger at Marie Enger's website, to which there is a link in the doobly-doo. And while you're there, you can check out all their other neat stuff, like their super cool TTRPG Casket Land, or their wide array of Vatspawn-based artwork. I do love the Vatspawn. Glow Pit for life. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's definitely everything that I wanted to talk about today, so I'll just go ahead and hit this button that stops the Oh, yeah. I guess there is, in fact, one more tiny little thing. All right, brace yourself, because there is no way you saw this coming. I'm trans. I am a trans woman, which means that my pronouns are a galactic standard feminine. I've been debating how to do this, and for a long time I planned on doing a great big complicated video essay, like so many of the trans people that I admire have done. But the more I think about it, the more I think that doesn't quite fit my situation. My transition is, of course, a profound process for me that has effects on every element of my life. But it's not going to shake things up around here very much. Alright, unlike, say, Abigail Thorne or Eric Sophia McAllister, both brilliant on-camera personalities who have made powerful, moving pieces of art about their transition, mine could go largely invisible. I mean, I've been working on it for some time, and I bet none of you have even noticed. The style of my content means that really, if I wanted, I could stay stealth forever. If I could stand it. As anyone in the audience who has been in the closet will recognize, though, it's not quite that simple. In the end, I decided that this was how it made sense to do it, as the second note in a video that is largely about a very cool cartoon skeleton. It matters a lot to me, but in the context of the videos I make here, the subject matter and the style of the content probably isn't going to change at all. So, I'm trying to thread a needle of emphasis very carefully here. But I did want to spend some time talking about it for 3 reasons. First of all, the littlest thing. In the process of doing commentary, I sometimes have to talk about myself a little bit, sometimes in the third person, sometimes I have to use a pronoun. I have kind of already started using feminine terms while doing that some of the time whenever I was feeling brave, and I'm going to do so all of the time from now on. And people notice that sort of thing, and they have questions, and now those questions have an answer. Pretending to be a dude sucks, and I'm done with it. Which brings us to the second reason, also a matter of pragmatics but slightly larger, which is my voice. My voice does not... It bothers me. And some days the dysphoria that it induces can be really brutal. So at the moment, my plan is to change it, and I'm working on developing a new voice that will work better for me. I don't know when I will start using my new voice for videos, or even that it will for sure happen. Maybe because of therapy or whatever, I'll end up finding a way to be at peace with my current voice or something. I don't really... I'm not sure. I'm not going to predict the future on this, but again, if that time comes and I do switch to a voice that fits me better, people will have a question, and so I just wanted this to be here. Here is the answer to that question. My original plan was actually that my voice was going to be the thing that determined the timing of this coming out video. The coming out video would be the first thing I did in the new voice. Unfortunately, as I have alluded a little bit here, slow progress on the voice and the increasing pressure of the closet have made that a little bit untenable. Living the lie hurts too much, and it's worse every day, and I kind of gotta, yeah. The final reason that I think it's important to talk about this is to provide some kind of guidepost for the trans people who will come after me. Maybe trans people who are in the audience right now and don't know it. To some extent, I can do that by just existing while out, which, yeah, I'm gonna do. I think there's a good chance that I would not have made it to this point if not for the light of other trans people doing that very same thing and helping me find my way. I hope that by just being me where others can see it, I can provide that same service for someone else. Up-and-coming eggs deserve to see trans people just out there and functioning and having a semi-normal time in the world, which sometimes I even do that. But I have a sort of a more specific version of this goal as well. So I didn't realize that I was trans until I was in my 30s. To be clear, I had been suffering the effects of my gender dysphoria my entire life, and on a number of occasions had only narrowly survived them, but I didn't know that that was what it was, which, as you might imagine, made it essentially impossible to fight. I wrestled with the symptoms, and I lost frequently, and I suffered terribly because of it in ways that really damaged my life and the lives of people around me. I was kind of a rolling catastrophe. I would describe this as a thoroughly one-star experience, and I am here to help you all avoid it if I can. If you hear something of yourself in the thing that I am about to describe, I hope this can help you steer out of it. For as long as I can remember, I felt totally disconnected from my body. Like, it didn't feel like a thing that was me, or even a thing of me. It felt like a prison that contained me, like this loathsome creature that I had to rely on to navigate the world. And I learned to hate it. I believed it was ugly, truly, profoundly ugly. So I avoided mirrors and cameras, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do in this day and age, but I did a pretty good job. I'm in my late 30s, and almost no pictures of me exist. I'm like a cryptid. Talking about it now, with the benefit of what I know now, it seems so obvious what the problem was, but at the time, I honestly convinced myself that it was normal. And being immersed in nerd culture gave me a lot of circumstantial evidence for that. You know, I would read a science fiction story about transferring the human mind into a computer or a robot or something, and think, well, of course, everyone wants to escape their horrific, traumatizing body. Or I'd read a Penny Arcade news post where Jerry Holkins would offhandedly refer to his body as a worm-like husk or something, and I'd go, yeah, take that, stupid husks. I managed to convince myself, somehow, that most people felt what I felt, or at least some version of what I felt. It took a long time for me to untangle that is not, in fact, how most people relate to their bodies. And you might imagine that the proliferation of cell phone cameras and social media, which led to everybody taking pictures of themselves all of the time, would have shaken that loose for me. But somehow, no, that's not what happened. It turns out that when you are actively looking for evidence of something and not looking at all for evidence against it, you can come to some pretty whack conclusions. That total disconnection came with a pervasive misery that I never quite seemed to get a handle on. Again, from the vantage point of the present, it's clear to me how connected these two things were, but in my youth, I believed they were different problems, in part because of the aforementioned whack conclusions. I didn't know why I was miserable, and when you're in the middle of it, you can have a really hard time, triangulating the source of that. It's like trying to get your bearings in an impenetrable fog. It was just this pressure coming from all sides all at once, and some days there would be less, and some days there would be more, but it was always there. At its best, it was merely distracting and frustrating, and at its worst, it was completely debilitating. I would sometimes lose entire days to the feeling that I barely existed, that I was disconnected from my body in a way that prevented me from having agency within it. The oppressiveness of that is hard to put into words. At times, it seemed like there could be no relief and only one escape. And it was an escape that I did feel compelled to attempt. More than once. And at this point, some of you are noticing that none of this stuff seems like it has anything to do with gender, which is true. Not in any obvious way. I gather that the phenomenon that I'm describing here is called depersonalization. And it sucks, it's very bad, but it's certainly not unique to sufferers of gender dysphoria. But that's what made this so difficult. That's what made this so insidious for me. Okay, for most of my life, I had only heard one trans story. Someone who was assigned male at birth, but who knew from the age of like 2 years old that she wanted to wear dresses and play with dolls, and then whose life was basically destroyed by the friction between her attempts to be the person that she already knew that she was and other people's expectations of her. Right? This is a thing that, like, when you see a trans character represented sympathetically in media, I feel like this is a pretty common version of that thing. I will, as a little aside here, note that I have spoken at this point to a number of trans people, real actual trans people firsthand, and I have not heard any of them have that as their story. And one of them pointed out to me when I said that it was weird that that was the thing that I had always known, but nobody seemed to fit it. One of them pointed out to me that I saw that in like a TV show or a movie or something where it was almost certainly written by a cis person. And yeah, that's a fair point. I'm not saying if you're trans, I'm not saying you can't have had this story, but maybe it's not so common, it turns out. And that's extremely not me, not even a little bit. So it did not occur to me that I could be trans until a lot of other stuff happened first. The story of exactly how I worked out that I'm trans is not one that I'm going to tell here. It's very long and complicated and honestly pretty dark, and I do not have it in me to walk that particular road today. But what I am telling you here is that when I finally realized and accepted that I am trans and began to conceptualize and understand myself as a woman, the depersonalization disappeared, like completely. Not got lighter, but it's gone now. And like almost immediately too. I wish that I could put into words what that feels like. How thoroughly different everything and every moment of my life feels now. It's miraculous. If I said I feel like a completely different person, most of you would hear that as hyperbole, but in actuality, it would be a dramatic understatement. Because if what I feel like now is a person, I don't even have a word for what I was before. Like, what is less than a ghost? You know, like, everything feels different in a really fundamental way. Like it's closer and louder and brighter, or like I'm experiencing it now with my own senses instead of just as a story that is being told to me. I'm not going to pretend, miraculous as this is, that it solved all my problems or anything. You know, I still have to deal with chronic depression and my ADHD and my general anxiety problems. But even that stuff, well, even dealing with that is so much easier. It is not the case that those things gotta be better or less intense themselves, but like, without even realizing it, I was constantly operating right at the edge of my capability, like always walking around 1 pound underneath my carrying capacity, you know? If anything happened, if even a tiny little thing got added to the pile, it would totally overwhelm me and I would just collapse. And that was so normal, so all of the time for me, that I didn't even realize I could feel any other way. That's just what I thought it was to live. And, like, decades in this state. It's so much wasted time. And that's the point. That's why I'm telling you this. If what I've said here sounds like you, if you experience that disconnect, that feeling of inability to claim your body or have agency within it, you might be suffering from depersonalization, and you don't have to be. It's not normal. It's not how everybody feels. You're not doomed to it. You can feel so much better. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're trans. It does probably mean that you should get some help, though. look into it, see a therapist. That said, it can't hurt to just look under the hood and check on your gender, especially if you've never really thought about it. That's a thing that I realized while I was sort of working out what my deal was. I asked a lot of my friends, hey, how would you describe your experience of your gender? And everyone had never thought about it before. So it might be a good thing to take a moment with. You might, like me, be a little surprised at what you find for just a moment before it all at once makes actually a huge amount of undeniable sense. And you deserve that. You deserve to feel like you in a body that is you, and you deserve it today. You deserve to not have to waste any more time. It feels so wonderful to feel integrated, to feel like my body and my thoughts and my emotions and my sensations are all part of the same thing, and that thing is me. I get to be that. To look in the mirror and recognize myself, it's frustrating to say this, but it is fully beyond words. I know that I've talked about this before on the channel. I used to have a real thing about mirrors. I did not like to look in mirrors, and the longer I looked, the worse and more intense the feeling got. And it was this fear, this constantly slowly growing fear, that the longer I looked, the more likely it was that the person in the reflection would do something that I wasn't doing. That they would smile or move or even just blink when I didn't. And that then I would have to know that that had happened and nobody would ever believe me. And I have spent more time looking in the mirror since I accepted my transness than I did in the 30 plus years before that. And I didn't even realize this for months, which actually seems really silly in retrospect. But you'll have to forgive me. There's kind of a lot going on with me at the time. In all that time, I have not felt that fear once. It's gone. Because now I look in the mirror and I see this person, this woman, and I know her. I recognize her. It's me. Of course, that's the moment when I break. It's the really silly thing about knowing how mirrors work. Anyway. Yeah, so that's it. That's that. I still have bad feelings sometimes in the mirror because dysphoria is a real thing and it still sucks. But I would take that over the other thing every day, no question. Yeah, so I'm still going to go by SB. You can still call me SB. What it stands for is changing, but you probably didn't know what it stood for before anyway, so it won't be a problem. And also, we have this cool new skeleton friend, because the new me is braver and is actually capable of sometimes reaching out to people. So that's all. No big changes around here, just a little tiny update. This is, of course, the part of the thing where I say all the thank yous. Thank you very much to everyone for all of the support over the years. Thank you to everyone who has ever donated or ever shared one of my videos or ever liked or ever commented or frankly ever just watched even one single thing. Really, it has made such a difference in my life. This YouTube thing means a lot to me. And honestly, it's part of the reason that I was able to even make the space that I needed for myself to come through these last couple of tumultuous years in as good of a condition as I have. Yeah, it's really meaningful. Again, beyond words. For a person who talks for a living, I sure don't words very good. Okay, I may take tomorrow off because this was very stressful, but come back real soon for more games and new games and all kinds of weird stuff. And I'll see you then.